Photography brings me back to me. It grounds me, it inspires me, and it pushes the boundaries for the life I would like to lead and the life I'm living now. My name's Lucia Griggi. I'm a travel, adventure and wildlife photographer. I love going to some of the most remote regions on the earth, some of which include Antarctica, the Arctic, Far East Russia, Siberia, Panama, Colombia. I don't know, I can keep going. Half of them I can never even remember because I feel like I live such a fast-paced life. But actually when I'm in these places, I feel like that's my chance to slow down. I'm so far removed to what most might say is normal life, and sometimes it's hard coming back into society and explaining where I spend most of my time. Photography really wasn't something which I set out to do. It was more of a means to document the life that I wanted to lead, and for now I sit here and I guess I do lead. And to me that's the most special part of it. I use my camera as a tool to look back and reflect and to capture moments in time where I can remember that I can come back and bring that photo, re-look at it, and when I look back at those photos it gives me that feeling of adrenaline and that feeling of contentment that is what I need to live. It's the drive to explore and adventure, to go on expeditions, to find new corners of the world. I don't really set out to necessarily go to get the best photo or, you know, have necessarily an image in mind, but for me, an image that is gold that I'll always remember is a moment that I experienced that I want to bring back and show that next person and to relive that moment myself. I was really lucky in life. My parents gave me a good start, and I was swimming and I was playing music, and I was living landlocked at the time, and the ocean wasn't necessarily something that really was part of my life growing up. But then I moved to Cornwall, the coast in the UK, and I learned how to surf, and I started this whole new life where surfing to me was at the foremost of my mind. You know, I lived and breathed it every day, and surfing is what's travelled me around the world, not necessarily photography. Photography is something which is a means to capture these moments of this life I'm living. A camera and capturing a moment and having this tool is something that walks alongside me as I'm travelling through my life and what I need to experience to fulfil that. So relying on it and having this is part of me. It's an extension of who I am, an extension of what I want to capture when I see this world. That feeling that goes through you when you have those opportunities and when I am in that moment, I can't describe. It's really hard to describe. It completes me, and it's something which is a constant in my life and I need it. I first picked up a camera. It was actually my dad that gave me the camera. I decided that I wanted to go on a trip to New Zealand and Australia and go and explore, and my dad had a camera, an old film camera, and he gave that to me. So I took it for my travels, and I guess that was the start of it. Oh dear, yeah, seems like a long time ago now. I don't even really remember why I took it. I wasn't into photography at the time. I just wanted to travel and see the world, really. I didn't really understand or know where I was going or what I was going to do when I got there. But I did start taking some pictures, and I just took it because I wanted to record the moments that I was having at the time. I think, you know, using my dad's camera when it really came into play was when I visited Morocco and I was there on a surf trip. And I remember actually the first photo I ever took. I was on the beach, a friend of mine had gone out in the water and went for a surf, and I remember it was sundown and I had the camera and I thought, oh, I'll just ask them if I can take sort of a portrait of them sort of holding the board sort of just before they're about to go in. And there were all these shadows that were coming over the beach, and I got this image which was this black and white image which I still have on my wall today. It was quite interesting, really, a bit of an interesting composition. Not that I even knew what the word composition was at that time. And the sun looked like the moon, and it was just a very emotional picture which I always look back at and think, wow, how far I've come, really. I think sometimes until you look back at those moments and when your understanding was so limited, and how you look at your journey, you know, as a person, not necessarily as a photographer or a creative, but the journey every one of us takes through life and the steps we take, and, you know, realising actually I've accomplished quite a lot. I've come to this point because I've learned over those 2 decades of how to get there. It's an art of growing and an art of walking through the process yourself, whether you have guidance on that or not. For me, I took the path of figuring things out for myself and really basing how I learned photography and how I progressed from then in a way where I learnt as I went along with what I loved to go and see and where I was going. I never set out to make photography my career as such. It was, I don't know, it's something just kind of came along really. I think from the love of travel and surfing and having my dad's camera back then, and I guess it was a natural progression without even realising I didn't set out to go and sell photos to become a photographer. I guess it kind of came to me in that way, and then I really enjoyed, you know, carrying on that path. And I always remember when I first started travelling, you know, when you get to the airport and it would say, you know, occupation, I'd be like, oh, I don't know what to put. I don't really know who I am. Sometimes I figure even nowadays I question, you know, am I a travel, adventure, wildlife photographer, a portrait? I mean, you label things, and yes, that's what I work in. I predominantly work in the adventure and travel world, but yes, I take portraits and I love taking portraits and culture. And I remember that moment of being in the airport and thinking, oh, I'm going to have to officially label myself as what? And I thought, well, it's a photographer, I guess. I mean, and that came naturally. So maybe looking back at that, it makes me laugh a bit, thinking, well, I kind of labelled myself there, and it's finally what I actually, I guess, became really, not really necessarily setting out to do so. I started out in action sports, so because of my lifestyle, my love of surfing and travelling, surfing myself, I ended up taking pictures of that, and you know, this sort of led me into my first stage of my career where I travelled the world, you know, in search of some of the most amazing waves, some of the biggest swells, some of the most remote locations. I wanted to find these reef breaks, these you know, beach breaks, all different, you know, corners of our world where we have these amazing waves and some of the most amazing surfers actually taking these on. And it wasn't really a job for me. It was something which I just absolutely couldn't live not being a part of. So surfing developed into a career when I started working for companies where, you know, I was doing editorial features, I was covering events, I was doing commercial campaigns for some of, you know, the top surf brands. I also sort of branched off into skateboard and snowboarding, and skateboarding was a really large part of my career when for many, many years working on books and publishing them. And it was a really important time because I really was deep into this culture, which is, you know, what I live today and still live, even though I've branched into a very different genre of, you know, travel and wildlife. It's still very much linked. I love to travel. I mean, traveling to me is my world. So some of the places I've travelled to in the last few years have been the Galapagos Islands. It's an absolute amazing place. The geology and the wildlife and everything about it is just, it's just mind-blowing. I did an expedition through the Northeast Passage, and we went to some very remote locations and small islands off the coast of Russia, up in that sort of Arctic circle. It's very sparse, and there's not really much, sometimes there's not much life up there. You can go for days, you know, out at sea, and you might not really see anything apart from low grey skies and mist. And when we came ashore to this one place, a small island, we were greeted by some of the locals, and I remember one of the girls, she had piercing blue eyes, and there was actually sort of a blue wall sort of in the village, and I made, you know, a portrait where I sort of put her in front of that wall to really accentuate her eyes. But she seemed so kind and so naive, and you know, she's probably never been off that spit of sand where she lives in the high Arctic. And I think seeing us and seeing something different was something quite new for her. you can't really force a portrait on someone, and you really have to build that bond, and putting time with these people and offering gifts and them offering something back. It's a journey which the end result is that portrait which I get to take home and look at again and again. Alaska to me gives me a combination of epic wildlife, beautiful landscapes and scenery, the weather which I absolutely love to shoot in. You need to be able to feel alive, and I like to feel like I live it. Everything I love to go about in my day, whether that's with my camera, going for a swim, going on a hike, exploring, the journeys I take, it just encompasses all of that into one, and therefore I just feel at home when I'm there. I've always felt that my camera is just an extension of my arm. So, my setup and using my 1DX Mark III, my 5D is my second body, and then I would always have my, EF 300 2.8 prime, most likely with my 16-35 2.8. But at the same time, working in the field and trying to pack as lightweight as possible and minimise, having all that equipment and being free to move around, I think mirrorless is really the way to go. With mirrorless, you're not compromising the quality either. You've got a lightweight to set up. Ergonomically, it feels good. And the thought of being in some of these compromising positions, whether it's shooting down in aerials or trekking through a forest to try and find some wildlife, I think it's going to help me a lot. So I'm excited to see where it goes and jump on board with that, and the options we're having to be able to have full frame and then to have the eye tracking and all these different features which are here to support us as photographers and to really allow us to get the better shot. And it's quite hard because you're what you're used to and what you rely on to just get that shot, because you can do it with your eyes closed. When I've got the 1DX in the field, or even my 5D or even the 5DS for aerials, I know exactly which camera is for which, I know exactly which lens to put on, and I don't have to think about it, which I think for a photographer is almost that stage you like to get to think, I've got to this point. It's all now in creating my vision and having a voice to express through your photo what you want to show the world. When I experienced using the R6 and the 7200 RF lens, the f4, again, a lens I hadn't, I don't generally shoot f4 in the field. I'm always on a 2.8 or something, where I can open it up a lot more. And, I didn't really have any expectations of trying that out in the field. But actually, it gave me shots I don't think I would have got before, and the lightweightness of this setup and being able to hold it with sort of one hand, I think if I'd been on my 1DX with the 7200 or my 300, I probably wouldn't have been able to get in the right place at the right time to get that. Also the eye tracking, that's something that has really intrigued me. As a photographer, especially with wildlife, it's allowing you to push those boundaries and to really support you in getting these challenging shots that, as photographers we all face. We all face a challenge at, where we decide to put ourselves, where we position ourselves, at what time, and, giving us the best possible path to get the shot we really want to come home with. As photographers, we get very fixated on what we need to bring home, what this perfect shot is, and a lot of the time we come home with a perfect shot, and other times we come home with something which is even better or something unexpected. And I think those moments are really important. It's those unexpected surprises that I think push us to the next shot. Photography really draws you in. It takes you and leads you to some of these most amazing places, and you want to capture this moment, but at the same time it's testing. There's so much effort that's put into it to prepare and then to get out there in the field, and then that expectation that you have on yourself to capture it, to have the right light, to be in the right position, to have the right team around you to support you. So many things can go wrong, and I think you forget about the raw side of what we do as photographers, and I can say firsthand that it's not always glamour. There's a lot of times where it's testing and the weather's turned bad and it's cold, and all I want to do is just be somewhere warm and not be there. But you push through it because when you get that end result, it's priceless. And I think you calculate that risk by your experience with the subject. For me with surf photography, I know that when I'm in the ocean and I'm aligned with the energy and I can feel the power and I understand the timings of the waves or where I'm at and the environment around me, whether it's reef or sand. I think pushing to the limit, for me, I think I always try and push a little past it. For me, that's part of, I need to, that's essential to get the shot. I've never looked back and thought, oh, I should have really got into the barrel more, I should have got in there, or, I should have maybe just got a little bit closer just to get that better wide angle shot of the polar bear that I really needed. And the answer in, do I push the boundaries, do I push to get the shot, or do I hold back and let the shot come to me, is a balance, and you let the wildlife dictate that, and you will push to the point where you feel comfortable and with the knowledge about the animals you're shooting. I have pushed the limit on many occasions, and there has been times in the moment when I thought, oh, I've pushed this one too far, and I'm either 10 meters underwater in pitch blackness and I'm thinking I don't have enough air and when's my next breath. And I've been in really remote locations where I felt that I feel unsafe, or I feel like I'm questioning, should I be here? Is this all worth it? And the answer is yes. I mean, the thing is, when you do that, and doing that makes me feel alive, so I have to do it. There's no question about it. And when I look back at that, they are the stories I have. So it's always those times when I've pushed the limits, or I've maybe taken that step too far, where 10 years later I'm still talking about it and I've got the shot to show for it. Front cover of Surfer's Journal, that was an interesting one, because I wasn't in Antarctica to shoot surfing, that's for sure, and crossing the Drake Passage, which is notorious for different currents and swell directions, which I was there to shoot penguins. And looking over to the right, I ended up seeing this wave starting to break, and it was breaking off of an iceberg which wasn't grounded. And I call it the ghost wave because you'll never see that wave again. I mean, the wave formed through specific currents breaking in the middle of nowhere and making the wave by hitting off of the iceberg. Anyway, it happened to get the front cover of Surfer's Journal, and yeah, it's funny when you least expect something, it happens. And again, this is an example of being really not necessarily prepared in going to shoot that, but I'd had a whole lifetime of surf photography behind me, and that's all I did was shoot waves. So having that experience and that time, and then implementing it in a completely different space I was in, working with wildlife, actually worked out really well, so that was great. One of my favourite photos is of Waimea Bay. I took this photo from a slightly different angle of the drop of a surfer, and it almost looks like it's in black and white, but it's not. It's sort of a monochrome feel to it because it was very much backlit, and just the shadows and the lines of that makes that shot quite different. I always feel like I'm in a rush to see the next place or travel to the next new destination, and I find it hard to sit still in one place, and sometimes that can be seen as, well, she just never stop, and I guess I don't. But the thing is when I'm at these destinations, and whether I'm on a beach or in the ocean with my surf photography, or in a remote location waiting for wildlife and spending time there, I have so much time to stop and think. And the beauty of it is that I'm in some of the most beautiful landscapes that the world has to offer, and I'm by myself. And the build-up of expectation and the excitement I have before I get there is just, it's an addiction. It's something which I have to do over and over and over again, because if I don't have that, I don't feel that I'm living fully. And I think that's what I'm so grateful for with photography, is I've become so passionate about taking pictures and documenting some of these places I'm going to and some of these last frontiers. And my camera gives me a voice. It gives me the opportunity to express who I am in one single frame in a box, where I look through most of life and frame and consolidate that feeling, that scent, and everything about that moment that I took It encapsulates that feeling. Some of the places I go to are so remote that it's a very costly journey to get to, and I feel a huge responsibility when I'm there after all of that time and money to get me there. I say to myself, well, where do I start? You know, it's true, I'm not just going there and I'm coming back with, you know, amazing images of wildlife or, you know, or adventure and it's easy. It's quite taxing in the fact that the responsibility I have to push that button and to get that one photo which determines how or who will look into that image to bring back awareness to people that may need that to activate change or make the changes they need to do in their day-to-day lives. That responsibility lies with me, and I know I've got that one shot to really make a difference. That's something I carry around with me every day, whether I'm there or not. It bears on me, it actually forces me and gives me that drive to get to the next destination, to get another image which can influence and change the way people act and see the world.